I noticed that there's a lot of offers. Everyone's trying to get you to borrow from their company, and a lot of the stuff seems a little squirrely, a little hairy, Paul. So I pulled this up. I made this anonymous so that you can chime in on this.
Sure.
How do you get a loan approval? It looks like short-term rental cash flow can help you. Now this one company says leverage your rental portfolio, get a rate as low as 7.25, light documentation, no tax returns, no income verification, no personal income. You qualify for the DSCR. Sherry, what did that stand for again?
Debt service coverage ratio. So back in the early 2000s, we had what's called a no doc loan. Borrower would say, hey, I make $1 million. Okay, Mr. Customer, we're going to give you whatever you want. Those loans were gone for years and years during 08, 09, and 10 when the industry got really tight. We're starting to see these non-QM loans that they're a non-Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac mortgage. They're basically a brokered loan that looks at alternative situations. No income, no asset. Well, they probably look at assets. That's not fair. No income is the big one. They don't look at your tax returns. They're going to look at a borrower that wants to buy an investment property and say, okay, let's look at the cash flow. So let's say they want to buy a three-unit residential property, and it brings in $10,000 a month. Then they look at your mortgage payment and say, oh, your mortgage payment's only about $4,000 or $5,000 a month. It's cash positive. It's solely based off of your cash flow that comes in for these properties. However, with the rise in rates, a lot of these properties didn't meet the cash flow requirement. You got an 8, 9, 10% interest rate, and your payment and your cash flow is identical. This is where you run into challenges. But when rates were on an investment property, rate was 5%, most properties are cash flow positive. So it's a program that's out there. Unfortunately, it's not something that I offer. It's through a broker channel.
Oh, by the way, Mitch Tannenhill wants to say hi to everybody. Hi, Mitch.
Hey, Mitch.
And Marco.
Hey, Mitch.
Mitch is a very loyal watcher of the Downbeach Buzz real estate webcast.
Good man.
He's a good real estate guy too. Him and his partner there. Yes.
He's a great colleague and love doing deals with Mitch. So Mitch, it's been a while. So let's do a deal.
And Mitch is a dog guy, I think, too, isn't he?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What's with real estate and dogs? At least you go with the bird. You're unique, All right. So Sherry, somebody comes up to you and says, I want to invest. I want to buy a second home down the shore, but you know what? I'll buy a big one. Maybe I'll turn it into an Airbnb. How do you guide them? You're there helping them buy into a market, but they're not sure whether it's a vacation home or they're going to make it into a business. That's a tough situation you have to kind of navigate.
Well, yeah, it's so funny because people are like, yeah, I want to invest. I'm like, okay, what are your investment goals? Are they cash flow or are they appreciation? Obviously, buying at the shore on paper, you're making lots of money as your property appreciates, right? But it's not necessarily a cash flow proposition. So yeah, and then I'll say, like, is it something you want to use sometimes and have great rental income from? So you really have to sit down and find out what the investment goals are. Every investor has different goals for why they're buying what they're buying. Or maybe it's just to buy something now they can rent out, but then eventually use it. Or there are people that bought homes that then they want to retire into. So you really have to have that buyer's consultation conversation, whether it's an investor or someone for personal use.
Besides the Downbeach Buzz being one of my favorite all-time websites, I go to AirDNA an awful lot, guys. You're familiar with us talking about AirDNA. AirDNA, they track the transactions and the industry heartbeat when it comes to VRBO and Airbnb. So want to take a quick peek, want to compare Ventnor to Atlantic City to Brigantine and see what the current marketplace is for Airbnb as well as VRBO. Want to take a look?
I do, but you don't have Margate on there?
No, because I wanted to go with the three markets that are very active, like really active with this. So I kind of kept them out a little bit because Margate seems to be managing the Airbnbs or the short-term rentals quite well. Now bear this in mind. This is just Airbnb they track and the VRBOs of the world. There's so many other ways of renting short-term rentals. You could have your own website. You could have your own social media, your own email list. You can be a real estate broker. That stuff is not being tracked by AirDNA. So keep in mind the numbers I'm going to show you are going to be much higher. So let's take a peek at Ventnor first, okay? See what we notice here. So we go to AirDNA, and we see right now they see 335 short-term rentals, Airbnb, VRBO. Most of them on Airbnb, but this doesn't track the realtor stuff, doesn't track people with their own private websites or social media or other ways of communicating with potential renters. And if you take a look at 25, 40, 65% of the stays are 1 or 2 nights. So that's the party house thing. Most people are renting for 1 or 2 nights. But I wanted to focus on something here, and that is the concept of property managers. Somebody saying, I like to get in the Airbnb game. I got no time to deal with it. So they outsource it to these property managers, also known as kind of derogatory absentee landlords. Absentee landlords not allowed in Ventnor. You have to have the person in charge to live in Ventnor, whereas other towns are saying, well, you can live just about anywhere. But take a look here. Evolve has 6 listings, and that's not a heck of a lot. So Ventnor is somewhat, I believe, under control. Let me go back to the next slide, and that is Brigantine. Let's see what they're up to. This is just tracking Airbnb and VRBO. 775.
Jesus.
Well, that relatively, that almost, it's really much higher because this is just tracking, but still a lot. And we come down here and we can see that 1 night and 2 night rentals make up about half of all transactions. Yeah. But come over here to the property management section, and this company called Evolve, they do all the work for you. They're managing 39 properties in Brigantine. Nothing wrong with that. But the question is that this is really turning into a pretty awesome business, a great industry. But I have a feeling that these municipalities are not doing the best possible job in extracting revenue and much more benefit for the entire community. So keep an eye on AirDNA and see these property managers, the listings. They continue to grow because who the heck wants to manage a short-term rental? It's a pain. It could be pretty challenging. And then the next slide, the climax here of this slide is Atlantic City.
How many 1-day rental? That's it? Oh yeah.
1,333. But that's not the big story here. We believe that's a lot more short-term rentals going on. This is just tracking VRBO.
Let's see what the 1 day looks like.
Yeah. So 1 nights, 44% of them are 1 night only. And then another 47% is 2 nights. That's why it's all hell breaks loose. If you're anywhere near, I know I have friends that are in parts of Atlantic City, the nice parts of Atlantic City, right across the street, man, party city. They can't stop it. But better yet, let's take a look at the property managers. How many are managing what? Cozy Suites is a property manager. They're managing 81 listings in Atlantic City.
Good.
The next in line is Cozy Co-Host. They're managing 68. Upfish Management, 47. Live Suite. You can see that that's the whole concept of absentee landlords and having somebody who's in charge of things being close by, how important that is. Because that's how Airbnb started. I live in a house. I'm going to rent out a side room or rent out my couch. That's how Airbnb started. But now you don't even see the property owner anywhere near the property. And that's where the problems occur. And that's why Ventnor put a very strict rule. If you want to do Airbnb, that's fine. But the contact person that must be involved, must be contactable 24/7. They got to live in Ventnor. Some towns are saying, well, you can live anywhere in Atlantic County. That's not going to be good. So just keep an eye on that. Who's the largest property managers? Cozy Suites, Cozy Co-Host. You're looking at 200 management deals here in Brigantine. That means who's keeping an eye on who's coming in and out of these properties. That's scary. But that's AirDNA. That's the slide.
Wait, can you go to the bottom of that again? It looked like there was like a little graph and it showed a peak in July also.
Yeah, I don't have all the
Like
information, but
that,
you can
that
see
graph
yeah.
next to the 60%, where
Yeah.
what is that? It
So that's
said
the
it like,
that's the
yeah.
occupancy rate, and I think right now it's at 60%. That makes sense, and then it goes as high as 86% in July,
Mm.
and it's a growth of 41% over the past year. So you can see the more there's inventory, the more people consider Airbnb and short-term rentals. What's going to happen? There's going to be an awful lot of what? It's going to be a lot of inventory. And what happens when there's too much inventory, Sherry Lilienfeld, since you're a numbers person? Too much inventory
Supply and
means what?
demand.
That's correct.
Supply and demand. If the demand's not there, it's okay. When you say too much, meaning too much supply, not as much demand, prices will come down.
Like I said before, cool.
No, you don't have the right accent. Cool. Come on. Let's get your New York accent going.
All right. Let's see here. And just one more scary slide. Can I do one scary slide?
Yep, we're good.
Paul, remember that old segment we used to do called
Stir the pot, Daddy.
It's sometimes I watch this and I go, holy moly. So this is from October 13th of 2022, about a year ago. And this is Ventnor commissioner meetings. And you got Lance Landgraf in the middle there, good man, and Beth Holtzman, the mayor at that time. And they are discussing property values. They're pretty pumped that a lot of Ventnor properties are rising in value. But the mayor wants to caution everybody, be careful, everybody. We may have to do this thing called a revaluation. We might have to do it if the assessed value and the price that it was sold at are certainly a certain far apart number, whatever that number is. We may have to revalue. Why don't we just watch the quick video and you tell me what you think?
The assessed values of the properties in Ventnor were $2,095,551,980. That's what they were assessed at. What they sold at was $2,530,859,879. An increase of $43,530,789. A 21% increase of what houses were assessed for compared to what they sold. That's great, but we have to be careful because of the ratio issue. We only went down 8 points. If you go down 10 points, the state can force you to do a reval.
You don't want to do that right now.
We don't want to do that. No. So that's great news. It's great for the homeowner selling, but we have to be careful because you're teetering on an issue where we don't want to have to do a reval.
So teetering, we got to be careful. How the hell do you be careful? How do you do that? Now, bear in mind, shortly after this video, Mayor Beth Holtzman, the mayor, and she posted it and she publicly stated in the newspapers that she had to sell her home and basically she couldn't find another home. This is all because of her divorce settlement. Very uncomfortable to talk about, but she talked about it publicly. But she stepped down from being a mayor because she had to move out and had to sell her home based on her divorce agreement. And then she had to move somewhere else because it was too expensive to live in her own town. Now let's get back to the assessments, the assessed values and the property. So Paul, somebody comes to you and says they want to borrow some money from you. Do things
appraised
like
value, not assessed.
It's appraised as opposed to assessed. Tell me what
assessed is done by the township. Assessed is done by the township. Appraised is done by a private third party that's sent out.
Do assessments play a role in the appraisal?
Never.
So assessments are what some local person deems because they have to whack up all the tax revenue. That's how they do that?
That's correct.
So is it likely that some towns that gap became so large that they do have to consider a reval, and nobody wants to do a reval because holy Jesus, that's a scary thing, huh?
Sounds like I've never experienced a reval, but it sounds like it's intense, which could really impact the market.
And you can see the guy in the middle, Mayor Lance Landgraf. He's the mayor now. He looked over at Beth Holtzman and says, "What are you talking about? Shh, don't say nothing. We don't want to do that." That's scary because you could have been locked into a nice, easy tax that you could handle for the past 10, 20 years. And now they're revaling.
Yep.
All of a sudden your neighborhood changed. How about you, Sherry? Does this conversation come up a little bit?
Well, this conversation about the tax, it really comes up with new construction, because when there's a listing for new construction, the taxes are like on the land value, right? And so you have to, again, this is where the disclosure comes in and educating people. You have to tell them, now keep in mind, if you buy this home at $2 million, based on the current tax rate, your taxes are going to be X. They put those tax rates on the home, the tax on the home once it's sold, once you have a certificate of occupancy. So that's something that can be misleading to people if they're not thinking about it. And then I'm sure, Paul, when you do people's mortgages on new construction, don't you go to the realtors and say, what are the taxes you expect to be on this house? Because that goes in your formula too, right? The taxes and insurance and the mortgage.
Yeah. The only time the assessed value comes up is going to be on new construction. There's a formula for each county and township. I'm actually doing a big $2.5 billion purchase in Ocean City, and their assessed tax value is like 0.99%, I think, of the purchase price. It's almost 1%. So whatever your sale price is, it's 1% what your taxes are going to be at. But yeah, we don't use that at all other than new construction.
Crazy times, yeah.
But however, when somebody buys a home and the assessed value, and this actually comes up like a lot in the condo buildings too, the assessed value is so much lower than the price that you buy it from. I think
Correct.
The township eventually catches up with you when there's a transfer of title at a certain price, and then they reassess it and your taxes can go up.
That's the way it happens now. It has to transfer from one property owner to the next.
Yeah, but I'm saying your taxes are going to go up if the assessed value is so much lower than what you're buying it from. So that is how municipalities get their bump. It's when there's a transfer of title and you establish the market price. For example, a lot of municipalities have a ratio, assessed value versus market value. Sometimes, let's say it's like 90%. Your assessed value is 90% of the market value. If you buy a home at a certain price, they're going to reassess you at 90% of the value you're buying it at. And it catches up with you in about a year. It's not like instantaneous, but they are getting their bump in income every time title's transferred.
Wow. So I do see a lot of lots like this.
Yeah.
Are these specs? I mean, there's more and more empty lots. Is that just because we're waiting for construction crews to show up, Cher? Or am I just taking some wild guesses here? But these are all places that were finally knocked down and prepared for, they're building some basic structures. So any thoughts on some of these properties? We're here right next to the Dunkin' Donuts in the middle of town, Ventnor.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm familiar with this property, but no, I just think, like, especially this one, until they get their plans approved, and a lot of times they're trying to sell it before they start building it. Keep in mind, these builders have a lot of money that they have to put out, and they always have a lot of money even before they start building. They have to acquire the property, they have their architectures, they have their permits. Sometimes they have to go to zoning, they have legal fees. So yeah, if they could try to sell the property before they break ground, before they start building, they're going to try to do that, which is why you'll see them sit sometimes